Okay, this is decompression problem number 1 using the U.S. Navy Tables Revision 7, 2017. There are going to be a total of 4 dives for example purposes. The first dive is going to be charted on using the City College dive chart, and the subsequent dives are going to be used on the square wave profiles, which you see listed here. Here's the City College dive chart. That is again for the first dive. All the information I'm going to give you on these examples, and they are examples only. First dive is usually going to be a dive that requires decompression stops in the water or exceeds the no decompression limits. The subsequent dives will be planning no stop dives or no decompression dives using U.S. Navy tables. Okay, let's get started here. The first dive, we're going to leave the surface at 6 o'clock and we're going to leave the bottom at 6:30. Navy definition of bottom time is leave surface to leave bottom. So therefore our bottom time is 30 minutes. Our depth is 130 feet. That information I have to give you. Now we're going to go ahead and chart this dive using the City College dive chart, which is similar to what's used in industry. You'll see these in the field. There are some slight variations. At the top of the chart, I want to fill in every single blank ultimately in all of the classes that we're doing. In particular, hyperbaric chamber operations, we're going to be doing surface decompression, so you have to get used to addressing each of these blanks. For example purposes today here, we're going to start out slow. We're going to write NA or draw a line through some of these boxes. I'm focused on right now getting the decompression profile correct. So our depth is 130 feet here. And it says no decompression time limit, 12 minutes. Well, where do I get that information from? If I come over to my U.S. Navy Tables Revision 7, I scroll down to 130 feet and I see that 12 minutes is the no stop limit, and that's where I find that information out. So I'm exceeding that, so it needs to be a dive where we perform in-water stops. Where do we get that information? We must scroll further down into the standard air decompression tables and look for the 130-foot depth. So we scroll down until we get to 130 feet. There's 110, 120. Now I'm on the 130-foot table here. The bottom times are listed right here or on the far left side in minutes. There's 12, 15, 20, 25, 30. So this is a dive that's going to require in-water stops. There are different decompression procedures that are available to us with the Navy tables, and we're going to use the in-water air selection right here. I'm using this category right here. There's also air and oxygen. We're going to get into that later on. And there's also surface decompression, which we can do, which tells us our chamber periods here. Don't be too concerned about that at this point here. Let's just work with the in-water air stops. So the diver is going to ascend from 130 feet, and he must stop. The diver must stop at 30 feet for 2 minutes. The diver is then going to come up. Tender is going to raise them up in the water column to 20 feet. And the diver is going to stay there for 32 minutes. So 2 and 32, a total of 34 minutes. We must wait before we can come directly to the surface. I'm going to write that information down here on the chart. Over here on the left-hand side under water decompression profile, I'm going to write my stops down. My first stop is my bottom, 130. My second stop is going to be 30 feet. My third stop is 20 feet. And my last stop is the surface at 0 feet. Write down your bottom times in minutes. A colon followed by numbers means minutes. A double colon is going to mean seconds. It's rare that we're going to be using seconds here now that the Navy's changed their decompression protocol. So 30 feet for 2 minutes, 20 feet for 32 minutes. Write that information down here. This information to the side here is the actual clock time. And fortunately for us, we're rounding numbers up with the Navy tables since they changed it in 2008. The gas that I'm breathing is air all the way through. I'm going to write that here, and I'm also going to write it over here under where it says breathing mixture. I'm going to write air. This is our bottom mixture. If I leave the surface at 6 o'clock, I'm going to leave the bottom at 6:30. That information I tell you. Now, it says reach bottom here. And this is an entry just to keep track of times during the actual job or actual dive. Now, the Navy allows us 75 feet a minute descent time. Now, well, that's an approximate value, and it's really a meaningless number because the diver's descent rate is going to be dictated by how fast they equalize their ears and a number of other things that are affected by the job. So 75 feet a minute goes in 130 feet, roughly 2 times. So we're going to take that number, round it up, say the diver's going to reach bottom at 6:02. It is important for us to understand that the diver, as soon as they leave the surface, the clock for bottom time is running. The diver is on bottom as far as the Navy tables are concerned once they leave the surface. So we take the maximum depth of the dive and we add our bottom time to that, 130 for 30. Diver's going to get off bottom at 6:30. Okay, so reach at 6:02. Not an important number, but this is an important number right here. I write it here, and then I write it here. Time to leave bottom, 06:30. If the supervisor tells you at the beginning of the dive, we want to keep this to a 30-minute bottom time, you're going to take that leave surface time and add 30 minutes to it. Incidentally, if we're leaving the surface, we have nice round numbers here for charting purposes. In reality, in the field, you're not going to be leaving right on the exact minute. You may leave at 0638 seconds. Well, the rule is we're going to take that number and round it down. So if it's 0638 seconds, it's still going to be 0600. We've just padded the diver's decompression time by 38 seconds is all we've done there. Err on the side of diver safety. Okay, let's look at our stops. Now, if we leave the bottom at 6:30, we have to travel 100 lineal feet from 130 to 30. There's our first stop. What time do we reach there? Well, ascending at 30 feet a minute, the diver's going to travel basically a foot every 2 seconds. So we can take the lineal feet that we're traveling and double it. That's my rule. Take your ascent lineal feet and double it. That is your ascent time in seconds. So 100 times 2 is 200 seconds. There are 60 seconds in a minute. So that would go into there 3 minutes and 20 seconds. So 3 minutes and 20 seconds is what it should take if you're traveling at a perfect 30 foot a minute ascent rate. Well, in reality, that would be great, but we're not going to carry seconds on our clock. So we're going to take that number and we're going to round it up to err on the side of diver safety and start his decompression time a little bit later on. If it takes him 3 minutes and 20 seconds, we're going to pad his decompression time by about 40 seconds. So we start the decompression time at 6:34. Coming up, we round up. Going down, we round down. So 6:34, I add my 2 minutes to it, and that is the time that I'm going to leave my 30-foot stop and move the diver to begin my 20-foot stop. Important for us to understand, since revision 6 in 2008, the Navy states that we can include ascent time as part of stop time when we're doing 10-foot stops in between. So as soon as that diver leaves the 30-foot stop, that clock is now running for the next stop for 32 minutes. So therefore, we're going to leave that 20-foot stop 32 minutes after we move from our prior stop. So at 7:08, we're going to leave our 20-foot stop. Okay. In reality, you bring the diver up 10 feet, should take you 20 seconds to bring that diver up 10 feet. So you bring the diver up slow, but as soon as he moves, that clock is running for the next stop time. So 7:08, and now I'm going to come directly to the surface with the diver, bring him directly to the surface at 30 feet a minute. They're traveling 20 feet to the surface, or 40 seconds it should take us. Depth in feet times 2, 40 seconds. That's our ascent time in seconds. So we're going to take that number. Coming up, we round up. We're going to round it up and start the diver's surface interval at 0709. Now I'm going to write that here, and I'm also going to write it reach surface water up here, 709, and then surface interval begins at 709. Now it says repet group down here, M. I'm going to write that in 2 places, here and also over here. Repet group in, the diver has no residual nitrogen, hasn't made any prior dives, so they have no residual nitrogen. The diver is clean, as we say. So M amount of nitrogen. Well, where do we find that information? We find it back here on our Navy tables, 130 for 30. If we scroll across, we see the repetitive group is M, right there, M, and we'll write it on our chart. So at 0709, the diver is an M diver. That's all we care about. I can fill in subsequent information here, whether I can make up, it's a sunny day, a sea condition, Beaufort scale of 2, wind speed north-northwest at 10 knots, visibility 50 feet. Safety briefing completed at 500 hours. That's your job safety analysis. And the diver must be questioned as to his or her fitness to dive, yes or no. Only the diver can make that determination. Supervisor, of course, can override it. If a diver says they're not fit to dive, the supervisor is generally not going to say, yeah, I think you are, get in the water. Diver says, no, I'm not diving, they're not diving. Okay, so we will take this information here and we will transfer it over onto our next chart. The last little box up here that I want you to pay attention to, it says total time of dive. Total time of dive is leave surface to reach surface. If they left at 6 o'clock and they reached at 7:09, that is 1 hour and 9 minutes. We're at a 1, a colon, and 9 minutes. Okay, so you're done with that first dive for example purposes here to get your feet wet with the charting. 7:09, I'm an M diver. I must now transfer that information over onto my second dive, which is actually right here, dive number 2. It's going to be a repetitive dive after this, and I write that information 7:09 and my new group or my surface interval group at the beginning of my surface interval, and this represents the beginning of the surface interval. This represents the surface interval up top here. This represents the new group and the leave surface time for the next dive. Depth on the outside, bottom time on the inside. Here's your decompression schedule. We'll get to all this in a little bit. This here stands for RNT, residual nitrogen time, ABT or ADT, actual dive time or actual bottom time. Equivalent single dive time right here, or total nitrogen time, represents the amount of nitrogen in the diver's body that we must account for when we pick our schedule. All right, let's get started with this. I have to tell you some information here. I'm going to ask you now to plan subsequent no stop dives, no decompression dives, as we say. I'm telling you that we're going to leave the surface at 1600. Well, if you reach the surface at 7:09, there are 60 minutes in an hour. 8 hours and 51 minutes represents the amount of time that you're on the surface. If you started on the surface as an M diver during this period of 8 hours and 51 minutes, nitrogen is coming out of your body. It is coming from your tissues to your lungs, and then you're exhaling it. So that level of nitrogen is decreasing over time. The tables will attempt to quantify that amount of nitrogen, and one of the ways we do that is using the residual nitrogen timetable and surface interval credit table, which is the third table that you'll see right here. Second and third table that you'll see here are table 9-8. All right, let's take a look at this. We know our surface interval is 8:51. We started as an M diver. We're now going to scroll across looking at these times in minutes. These are hours and minutes. So I'm looking for 8:51, where it fits. It doesn't fit in here. There's 2:38, 3:29. Scroll across, and it fits between 7 hours and 51 minutes and 8 hours, it fits between 8 hours and 43 minutes and 9 hours and 37 minutes. So right in here. And if we look and follow the arrows down, that tells you that you are a C diver. A C diver. You have C amount of nitrogen in your body. You went from M to C. That's a significant amount of off-gassing. This C amount of nitrogen we must still account for on subsequent dives. And this table down here is going to take the E amount of nitrogen and attempt to quantify it in terms of minutes based on a particular depth of your repetitive dive. So I'm a C diver at 1600. I am telling you that this C diver is going to 120 feet. The diver cannot obviously stay there for the no decompression time limit of 15 minutes. We want to make this a no decompression dive. It's very important that we understand this concept of residual nitrogen. C means that there's nitrogen in the diver's body. This is no decompression limit for actual bottom time and residual nitrogen time. If the diver were clean, but he's not, we could stay there for 15 minutes. So now we have to quantify how much residual nitrogen time, or penalty time as you've heard it said, is represented by a C diver going to 120 feet. And that's what the table is for here. So you're going to follow the arrow down from C down to where it intersects with 120. And it intersects right here at 9 minutes. 9 minutes of residual nitrogen time. So what that means, folks, is this diver, due to the prior dive and waiting for 8 hours and 51 minutes, still has 9 minutes of nitrogen in their body at 120 feet. While we just looked at the no decompression or total nitrogen time limit is 15, there's 9 already against the diver. The difference between 9 and 15 is 6. That is the actual bottom time that the diver could stay when added to that 9 minutes is going to be right on that 15 minutes. And I'm asking you to find the maximum actual dive time for no decompression dive. So that is right on the limit, right where it should be. There's no stop required. So I'm going to write 9 minutes here. Here's my answer, 6. I write that information here and here, right here on the square wave. 9 plus 6 is 15, and it is very important that we understand this concept, that we must select our decompression schedule based on the total amount of nitrogen in the diver's body, not just the bottom time. This 9 minutes is still there. So we decompress according to 15-minute equivalent single dive time or total nitrogen time. We select that. That is our schedule, 120 for 15, and we follow this chart right here, 120, come across till we hit 15. It's right on the no decompression limit, and we see that we're in F diver with all that nitrogen and bottom time from the prior dive plus the 6 minutes. We're now back up to F. So the diver reaches the surface as F, and I write that on the chart and I circle it. Now I'm going to chart the rest of the dive. If the diver left the surface at 1600, he has an actual bottom time of 6 minutes, not 15, 6 actual. 9 is theoretical, that's tissue time. 16 plus 6, he's going to leave the bottom at 1606. The diver has to account for, or you charting have to now account for what time he's going to reach the surface. 120, I'm traveling 120 lineal feet. There are no stops required, so I'm traveling 240 seconds, which happens to be divisible by 60, nice round 4 minutes. So in a perfect world, traveling at 30 feet a minute, 60 goes into 240 exactly 4 times. I reach the surface at 1610. 1606 plus 4 is 1610, and I am an F diver. 120 for 15 puts me on the surface as an F diver. This is all the information that I need to know for my next dive. 1610, I'm an F diver. I'm going to transfer that now to my third dive, and I'm going to make a third repetitive dive. These are kind of unheard of, but it's just to get us used to charting. These are theoretical dives. I wouldn't actually do these in actual practice. So 1610, I'm an F diver. I'm going to write that information right here on the chart. I have to give you information now to plan this third dive. The third dive, I'm always going to ask you to calculate the minimum surface interval based on a particular depth and bottom time to make a no decompression dive or no stop dive. In this example, I'm telling you the diver has a particular task to do for 40 minutes at 55 feet. What is the minimum surface interval to make this a no stop dive? Well, you know the diver has F amount of nitrogen in their body, and they're going to have to wait a certain period of time to make sure that they don't exceed the no decompression limit for 55 feet. Well, where do you start? Well, I'm asking you to make a 50-foot dive and not exceed the no decompression limits. So what are the no decompression limits for 55 feet? As I say, we define the limits. That is your first step. The limits for a 55-foot dive on our tables are 74 minutes. 74 minutes of total nitrogen time. You know you're going to have nitrogen from the bottom time, and you know you have nitrogen here as an F diver. So we can't exceed 74 minutes, actual plus residual. Well, if our limit is 74 and our actual is 40, the difference between the two only allows us 34 minutes for residual nitrogen time. 34 minutes maximum allowable residual nitrogen time at 55 feet. So we must wait until we have 34 minutes or less residual nitrogen time at 55 feet. Where do we find that information? Well, we're looking for 34 minutes on the 55-foot depth in the residual nitrogen timetable. So I come down here, and here's my residual nitrogen timetables right down here. I'm going to come down to the bottom time of, the depth of 55 feet. I'm going to scroll across horizontally here now. I'm working horizontally. These are RNT times in minutes, and I'm looking for 34 minutes or less. Well, 114, too much. Keep coming across, and the numbers are getting smaller. So we'll work in the right direction. Hey, look, here's 38. Is that less than 34? No. Keep coming across to the right, and there's 32. Is that less than 34? Yes, it is. What do I do now? I scroll and look up above, and that is in the E category. So that means if I wait until I'm an E diver, I will have 32 minutes of residual nitrogen time in my body. Well, I'm an F diver at the start of my surface interval, so F to E. So F, and if you work back against the tables, you'll see that F and E intersect between 53 and 144, right in here. Okay, 53 and 144. I'm asking you for the minimum surface interval, the minimum. So 53 is our answer for this, folks. So I'm going to write that number here at the top of our chart. It happens to be right on the no decompression limit, but that's what we're doing here with the tables to keep consistency. Okay, 53 minutes. In reality, I'd probably wait an hour and a half or so, and probably at least an hour before I would make this dive. Okay, 53 minutes. We reach the surface at 1610 from our prior dive. That means we're going to leave the surface at 1703. An F diver for 53 minutes, as we just looked at, is going to be an E diver. This E diver is now going to 55 feet. E down to 55 feet. Let's look again here to make sure. 32 minutes of residual nitrogen time. So that means that the diver has 32 minutes to account for before they even leave the surface at 55 feet. The diver's going to be down there for 40 minutes total. So the sum of the two is going to be our single equivalent dive time, or our total nitrogen time for that depth. So 72 minutes is what I must decompress according to, or use to pick a schedule. Is there a 55 for 72 schedule? I come back up to my first table where I have my repetitive group designation table here, and I'm looking for 55 for 72. You can see no decompression limit, again 74, and I'm below that. Well, here's 71. Can I use that? No. The rules are, if it doesn't fit, you're going to round it up. Okay, so 72, I'm going to use 74 to pick my decompression schedule. That is the information I must write over here for my schedule. 55 for 74 to show what we use to pick that new repetitive group designation of L. That diver makes that dive. They went from E back up to L again. Okay, so L, amount of nitrogen in the diver's body. Now, what time did they reach the surface? I am telling you the actual bottom time, or actual dive time, is 40 minutes. I'm going to write that information here and here. This is the actual clock time that the diver spends underwater. They don't spend 72 minutes underwater. They spend 40. This is tissue time that's included in here. Hopefully we have an understanding of that. So if I leave the surface at 1703 and add 40 minutes to that, I'm going to reach the surface at 1745, or I'm going to leave the bottom at 1743. I have 110 seconds of ascent time. 55 times 2 is 110 seconds. Divide that by 60. That goes in there 1 minute and 50 seconds. We're going to round that up to 2 minutes for charting purposes. And our diver is on the surface 1745 as an L diver. Now we can take this information and we're going to put it over on the beginning of our surface interval for our fourth and last dive. 1745 on an L diver. Here's your information here. And now I'm going to ask you to plan a no stop or no decompression dive after a surface interval of 8 hours, and you're going somewhere where the bottom time is going to be 30 minutes. And I want to know how deep you can go, the max depth you can go to make this a no-stop dive. Okay, so this one's a little unique. I'll show you how to do it here. An L diver for 8 hours. Well, right off the bat, we can calculate out a new group very easily based on that information. So our first step is going to be to get a new group. L for 8 hours is going to put us over here in the C category between 751 and 844. I am now a C diver, and now instead of working horizontally on the R&T timetable, I'm going to work vertically. And I'm looking, I know I have residual nitrogen in my body. This residual nitrogen, when added to the 30 minutes, cannot exceed the no decompression limits for the particular depth that I'm going to. And I'm asking you for the deepest depth. So how do you begin this? As I tell everybody, the easiest way to start this is to take a look and start at 60 feet. Look at the no decompression limit. Here on revision 7, the no decompression limit is now 63 minutes. So if I go to 60 feet, my actual bottom time of 30 minutes, when added to the residual nitrogen time, cannot exceed that 63 minutes. So let's take a look at the C diver going to 60 feet, how much residual nitrogen time they would have, and we're going to do a little addition. 60 feet in the C category here has 19 minutes of residual nitrogen time. 19 plus 30 is 49. It happens to be a lot less than that no decompression limit of 63 minutes that we just looked at. So can I make that dive? Yes, you can. Okay, is 60 the maximum depth though? We don't know. Let's go deeper. Let's check 70 feet. If I am going to 70 feet, my no decompression limit here is 48 minutes. Okay, but a diver going to 70 feet in a C category is going to have a different amount of residual nitrogen time based on that 70-foot profile. The diver going to 70 feet has 16 minutes of residual nitrogen time. 16 plus 30 is 46. We just looked at the no decompression limit of 48 minutes. So is it less? Yes, it is. So therefore, we could go to 70 feet. Let's keep going deeper to make sure it's the max. Let's go to 80 feet and check this. 80 feet, the no decompression limit is 39 minutes. 39 is the limit. I can't exceed 39 minutes when I add my actual and my residual. Well, how much residual is there at 80 feet? There's 14 minutes. 14 plus 30 actual is 44. That exceeds that 39 minutes. So 80, we can't go to 80 feet. We would be into a decompression stop dive. We want to keep this a no stop dive, so therefore 70 is our limit. I'm now going to chart the dive based on a 70-foot profile. Okay, L to C, 8 hours. We just did that prior. 1745, reaching the surface 8 hours later. That's 25:45 or 01:45 in the morning. Okay, our bottom time, I have to tell you that. I write that here and here. And now I'm going to add that bottom time to my leave surface time, and that's going to tell me what time we're leaving the surface down here. At 2:15, I'm going to leave the bottom. 2:15. I'm traveling 140 seconds. It should take me to travel 70 feet. depth times 2. 140 seconds goes in 2 minutes and 20 seconds. I'm going to round that up to 3 minutes. Add it to my 215. That is the time I will reach the surface at 218. 218. Now, I need to pick a group, a repetitive group, based on the total nitrogen time. If I look at a C diver going to 70 feet again, that diver has 16 minutes of residual nitrogen time. Add it to my 30-minute bottom time, total equivalent single dive time, or total nitrogen time of 46 minutes. And I pick a repetitive group based, or I pick a schedule based on 70 for 46. If 70 for 46 fits on the tables, I will use it. Is there a 70 for 46? No, there's a 42 and a 47. So I'm going to err on the side of diver safety, round that number up to 47, and that happens to be under the J category here. So I am a J diver at 218, and that is the last dive that we're doing. 218, I'm a J diver. And now we'll move on, and we'll work on our subsequent dives, which are basically just going to be the same type of questions, but different depths and different times.